She was powdered sugar and silk, all smiles and sweetness and cherry blossom cheeks, a queen born in lace, crowned in diamonds, and buried eventually in silence. You've seen her in paintings, blue eyes wide, hair like whipped cream stacked into towers, cheeks flushed like ripe fruit, but the closer you get, the less it smells like cake and more like rot. Because behind every gown and every rose-pink slipper, Marie Antoinette carried something heavier than perfume. She carried the quiet stink of fantasy, and no one was allowed to name it. Tonight, we drift into Versinat, the gold halls and painted ceilings, but the quieter corners, the underlayers, the part of the palace that sweated because the queen, for all her beauty and endless fabric, lived in a body, and that body, despite its silks and sweets, did what bodies do. It sweated, it itched, it needed care, but care in her world did not mean soap. Marie did not bathe as you do. Full immersion in water was rare. Her baths, when they happened, were more ceremonial than cleansing. Lukewarm milk baths, sometimes rose-scented, sometimes wine-tinted, but never too deep, and never too often. The doctors of her day believed that water opened the skin to illness, that too much scrubbing could exhaust the humus. Instead, she was wiped, dabbed, swaddled in linen soaked in floral infusions, a layer of lavender water, then a layer of violet oil, then a final veil of powdered starch or rice flour. The result, a body that glittered faintly in candlelight but never truly felt clean. She had perfumes, hundreds. Bottles lined her dressing table like tiny altars. Ambergris, bergamot, musk, neroli, scents chosen not for subtlety, but for domination. The goal was not to smell clean, it was to overwhelm the nose, to bury the body beneath fragrance. Her attendants reported that the queen's chambers reeked of sugar and sweat, of fading roses and something darker underneath old skin, wool soaked with months of wear, the hush of breath behind laced fans. She had gowns for every day, sometimes 3 or 4 in one morning. But that didn't mean her body was aired. Changing was about image, not hygiene. Layers upon layers. Corsets, chemises, underskirts, panniers, silk robes. Beneath it all, the queen's skin stayed trapped, damp, compressed, rarely washed, sometimes powdered between changes, but never scrubbed. And the linens were rarely changed as often as the public imagined. Stains were hidden with lace, smells with perfume, the truth with protocol. Her hair was a tower of fashion and filth, dressed into towering sculptures of curls and powdered puffs. It could take hours to style and weeks to leave untouched. Hairdressers used pomade made from animal fat, laced with perfume, then powdered with flour. It wasn't washed out. It was piled on, over and over, until her scalp crawled, literally. Combs couldn't reach the roots. Instead, Her ladies dusted her wigs and hairpieces with violet-scented powder and dabbed her temples with rose water to keep up appearances. If lice came, they came in silence. No one spoke of it, not in the halls of Versailles.
Her bedchamber, though grand, was a trap for heat and musk. Beneath the painted ceiling and velvet drapes, the air rarely moved. Windows were kept closed to protect her from drafts, which were believed to cause illness. As a result, the room clung to every set. The sweet rotting of discarded flowers, the faint sourness of sweat-soaked linens, the ghost of powder drifting from discarded corsets. There were no toilets, only commodes hidden behind folding screens. Porcelain bowls emptied too infrequently, especially during the more chaotic court days, when servants were preoccupied with guests, not filth. The queen rarely noticed or pretended not to. Her role was not to smell, but to glow. She floated through her days in scented clouds, fanned by servants, brushed and dressed and powdered until she resembled something too delicate to touch. But the truth was more human. Her body ached, her skin broke out. She suffered rashes beneath her corset bones and irritation behind her ears where powder crusted in folds. Sometimes she scratched subtly when no one was looking, but most of the time she endured. The women who tended her knew the truth. They were called the femmes de chambre, her personal attendants, and they saw the reality that paintings refused to show. They saw the sweat marks hidden under lace cuffs, the dark patches on undergarments, the waxy buildup behind powdered ears. And they said nothing. Silence was part of service. The queen's purity had to be preserved even as it rotted beneath the roses, and she did rot in little ways. Her teeth began to go, softened by too much sugar and not enough cleaning. Tooth powder was used, occasionally made of crushed charcoal or salt, but brushing was not routine. Mouthwash, if used, was more likely to be clove oil or wine, swished and spat without ceremony. The result was a mouth sweet with decay, hidden behind a gentle smile. Courtiers learned to stand at just the right distance, close enough to flatter, far enough to avoid the breath. Still, she remained adored. Her flaws were folded into the myth. A bit of body odor was charming. A soft scent of sweat beneath the perfume was natural. When rumors of her uncleanliness crept through the lower halls of Versailles, they were dismissed as jealousy. She was too perfect, too graceful to be so human. But the lower servants knew. They handled her discarded linens. They washed the cloths used to dab her underarms. They emptied the basins of vinegar water used to cleanse her hands and feet. And they whispered. The strangest part was her retreat not into cleanliness, but into fantasy. When the stench of Versailles became unbearable, when the protocol crushed her beneath its weight, Marie Antoinette fled into her petit Trianon, her personal estate on the palace grounds. There she lived out her fantasy of simplicity. She wore simpler gowns, dressed as a milkmaid, and played at rural life. But even then she did not bathe more. She still dabbed, still powdered, still avoided water. Her milkmaid dress was clean, but the skin beneath was not. It was never about being clean. It was about appearing untouched. And that illusion, as fragile as it was, lasted almost until the very end. Even as the people starved, even as rumors swirled that she bathed in milk while children ate dirt, the queen powdered her cheeks and adjusted her corset, because her role was not to be real, it was to be radiant. And then the powder cracked. The illusion built of roses and rice flour and sugar began to crumble. Revolution was coming. The people no longer wanted radiance, they wanted truth. They wanted hunger acknowledged, filth admitted. The myth of the queen who smelled like violets no longer soothed them, it mocked them. As her power slipped, so did the layers. She no longer had dozens of attendants brushing and perfuming her. Her gowns grew simpler, her cheeks less flushed with rouge. Her hair, once styled into mountain-like towers, was tied back in plain cloth. But even in captivity, some things remained the same. She still used perfumes. They brought her comfort, even in prison. a reminder of who she had been or who she had been told to be. Visitors noted that she smelled of lavender and orange blossom, faintly sour at the edges, like flowers past bloom. She had no servants to powder her, no silk chemises to lay her, but the old habits lingered like ghosts. She wiped her hands with scented claws. She combed her hair with fingers dipped in rose water. Her body, for the first time in decades, was plain, and yet it still bore the rituals. When they led her to the guillotine, she dressed in white. No powder, no paint. Her real skin showed pale, freckled, aging. Her hair was tied back simply. No perfume, no lace, just a body, breathing its last. The scent that once cloaked her in myth had vanished. For the first time, the people smelled nothing, just wind, just wood, just death. But the palace she left behind told a different story. Her empty chambers still carried her fragrance. Musk in the corners of silk cushions, powder clinging to abandoned brushes, a whisper of something floral in the grain of the dressing table. She was gone, but her scent lingered, the way memory does, half sweet, half sour, and it raised a strange question. Was she ever real at all? Maybe that's the truth of queenship. You spend your life being powdered, perfumed, painted, until the body underneath no longer matters. Until your sweat is hidden, your rot is sweetened, your breath is masked in orange blossom and denial. Marie Antoinette did not bathe like we do. She did not scrub or steam or soak. She dabbed, she powdered, she perfumed, and she smiled. So close your eyes now. Breathe in slow and deep. Imagine the stale sweetness of old roses, the crackle of starch as a corset is laced, the hush of velvet moving in candlelight. You are lying in the shadow of a queen who never truly touched water, but still shimmered in every mirror. She may have been dirty by today's standards, but in her world she was divine. And sometimes in the dark quiet before sleep, we remember her not as she was, but as she smelled.